And welcome if you're just joining us. Welcome to LSA's IDD Topics and Trends. This is our second talk, fireside chat, and our IDD Topics and Trends for 2023 season and series this year. We're very excited tonight. If you just joined us, we're having Marie Daane, the Executive Director of Parents Helping Parents, join us for our fireside chat with our Executive Director at LSA, Daane Hooper. We're really excited to have you here tonight. We'll get started in just a couple minutes and give people a few more seconds to join. Stay with us. We'll get started in just a few more seconds. And welcome. We're going to get started in just a few more seconds. Very excited to have everyone here tonight. This will be recorded, and so you'll find all our transcripts as well as a video on our website at lsahomes.org. This fireside chat with Maria Daane and Executive Director Daane Hooper at LSA. We will be starting it soon, and towards the end having a live fireside chat Q&A session. So stick around for that. We're looking forward to hearing your questions. We'll get started in just about maybe one more minute. All right. I think it's okay to get started. Hello again, my name is Hadia Fain, and I'll be your host tonight. Today, we're going to have Maria Daane from Parents Helping Parents. She's the Executive Director of Parents Helping Parents, and our Executive Director from Life Services Alternatives, Daane Hooper, joining us. But before we do that, I just wanted to go over a few instructions in case, for whatever reason, you're new to Zoom or don't understand how the webinar is going to run tonight. If you have any questions before our 30-minute Q&A session starts, or you just need some technical help, feel free to go to the bottom of your panel and you'll see the chat feature. You could type anything you need into that chat feature, and one of my colleagues here will be able to join you and see if they can help. At any given time during the Q&A session, if you want to ask questions, you can also use that feature that's at the bottom of your panel, and that will help us to know which questions are meant for them to answer, Maria and Daane to answer live and on air. Really excited to have you all here tonight. We do have a few questions for you before we get started. We are going to start our poll, and we're wondering if you can help us out. We want to know, how did you find out about this webinar? And also, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? So if you want to take a couple seconds, we have this poll running, and we'd love to know, where'd you hear about this webinar? And also, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? And I'll leave it open for about 10 more seconds. Thank you so much for helping us answer this question. It really does help us create content that you care about, and also make sure that we steer in the right direction. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to respond. I think we can go ahead and close our poll. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our Executive Director since 2007, Daane Hooper. Daane is a social entrepreneur and committed advocate for the rights of the developmentally disabled to live their best possible life in the community. Through his leadership, LSA has grown to serve adults in 15 homes throughout Santa Clara County, and soon to be 16. Daane continues to move the needle in residential living for the developmentally disabled in the South Bay as he works tirelessly with state and local governments on affordable housing, quality services, and human rights. Additionally, Daane sits on the board of directors of Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and he is a former board member of the Santa Clara Chorale. He is also a past president of the San Andreas Regional Center, where his son, Brent, is a supported living client. All right, Dana?
Yes, thank you, Hadia. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for attending. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest tonight, Maria Daane. Maria is the executive director of Parents Helping Parents, which is a nonprofit located here in Silicon Valley. Parents Helping Parents supports parents with children or adult children with disabilities, offering 600 trainings and support groups online each year, as well as a robust website visited by 200,000 annually. Maria has been at PHP for 6 years and especially values that over 90% of those who work at PHP, as well as the majority of the board of directors, are themselves parents of individuals with special needs, which makes the work especially meaningful. Maria has worked for over 20 years as a manager or director in the nonprofit sector, enjoys hiking and family time. Thank you, Maria.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me today, Dana.
Fantastic. Before we jump into it, we're going to start with our chat is basically is a question and answer session where I'll be asking some questions and Maria will get a chance to answer them. We'll of course then make some time for you to ask the questions and for us to be available to hopefully answer them. But let's go ahead and get started, Maria. And why don't we start with one that, even of course, we both talk a lot with parents, right? And, you know, parents often get decision fatigue and they feel overwhelmed and isolated. And I've heard that PHP believes that parents shouldn't feel alone on this journey. How does PHP build a community of support for parents?
That's a great question. So I think it harbors back to the beginning of Parents Helping Parents. We were started by a group of parents 47 years ago in San Jose who had children primarily with developmental disabilities. And as they were closing the institutions and families were keeping children with developmental disabilities in their homes, these parents rightfully discovered that they needed each other in order to understand how to get resources for their children, in order to be good parents to kids with developmental disabilities. And since that time, we've expanded to include all disabilities, but the core of it is the same, is that parents who are supported and informed will be able to build the brightest future for their children. So PHP, we developed this community by nearly every member of our staff is in fact a parent of a child or adult child with disabilities. So they've walked the journey and they understand, so that when a new parent calls, there's an immediate understanding that this is a person who has walked the journey of parenting a child with a disability in their own experience. And as well, we try to create opportunities for people to meet others. And so we have over 20 different support groups that parents can join. And I think when people think of support groups, they often think of the 1970s, of people sharing their feelings and all this. But our support groups, it's different than that. It's support and information. And it's if you want a great answer to a question, you bring it to a group of other parents who are in a similar situation, and often the answer is right there in that room. So there's just a great exchange of ideas and troubleshooting as parents journey together.
Well, that's fantastic. I have to say, as a parent myself, you know, when my son was very young, you know, we really struggled, and I wish we had had that kind of a resource or support group to, if nothing else, just to realize that we weren't completely alone in this, as well as, of course, to be able to share, you know, meaningful things that we learned.
And Dana, I
Um,
should mention almost everything we do is free. So people can enter irregardless of ability to pay, and we serve in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese.
Wow, fantastic. You know, and those 70s weren't always all about feeling. um, you know, these resources, what are some of them more what you would maybe call underutilized, or, you know, are there some that maybe people should know more about and that would, you know, help them in their journey?
You know, I've been thinking about that question. And first of all, Parents Helping Parents has a resource directory maintained by a great volunteer named Kate, who makes sure that parents have exhaustive resources at their fingertips. So we have 2,600 resources for recreational and legal and financial and educational available to parents that can assist them. In terms of what's underutilized, I think perhaps the most underutilized thing is accessing learning communities and learning alongside each other, because there's so much information coming at you. It can be hard to differentiate between what you should really pay attention to and focus on and what can wait or be discarded. And so following opinion leaders who are part of groups who specialize in your child's disability or part of parent centers like Parents Helping Parents can really help you focus on which resources might be more helpful to your family and that you can access if you knew they existed. I think a common phrase is parents don't know what they don't know, right? And so we do
exactly.
forget, but sometimes we find out about that swim program 5 years later than we needed it because we weren't in the mix of information.
Yeah, again, my recollection is I didn't even know the questions that I should be asking. And, you know, I think a lot of people are in that boat. So where would someone who's new to this community start when they're first doing research to find support for their loved one?
We usually encourage parents who have a child with a new diagnosis to really connect with both a parent center like Parents Helping Parents, as well as the disability-specific organization that may support their child's disability, such as Autism Society or Autism Speaks or Down Syndrome Connection. And so that they're getting both information specific to the disability as well as information about the parenting journey. Here at Parents Helping Parents, we have a great early start team that helps the younger ones who have new diagnoses. We also have a program called Sharing the Journey, which explains the landscape and helps parents as a group go through a series of classes to understand how the parenting journey is different when you have a child with disability.
And what about the regional center?
Usually parents are also connecting up with it depends on the disability, but those with intellectual disabilities are often connecting up with the regional center as well. And we support parents in understanding what their entitled services are underneath the Lanterman Act. And so depending on the age, there may be more or less services available through the regional center.
Great. Being the caregiver of a child with disabilities has its own unique set of challenges that other parents don't always understand. What's needed to help a family thrive in this area?
So we have an expression of Parents Helping Parents that families need a tribe. And unfortunately, sometimes what happens with families when their child has a disability, especially if it's a profound disability with a lot of behavioral aspects, is that the tribe that their family was a part of before that child may not be able to support and wrap around that family. And so sometimes their religious community or their potluck group in the neighborhood or their family of origin sort of backs away because they're not sure how to help. And so it's really key that families find a tribe that they can connect with, whether it's a national Facebook group or a local support group through the disability specific organization that they join or through Parents Helping Parents. It's really important to have a tribe of people who are walking a similar journey, who understand what it's like to go to Thanksgiving and have in-laws tell you how to parent your child whose challenges are very different than the children that your in-laws parented, or what it's like to have the 4th of July come and your family is going to have a different experience on the 4th of July because of the sensory challenges
Mhm.
for the child. And it's just important to have
Yeah.
other parents, other people who understand how life is different for you.
Yep, been there, done that. So I think, parents learn pretty quickly that, transitions can be especially difficult for their special needs child. Whether it's the start of school or the end of school and the beginning of summer, or, these transitions can be difficult. And of course, one of the biggest transitions is into adulthood and out of school, or as some people call it, dropping over the cliff.
Yep.
So how does Parents Helping Parents help parents explore options for this transition to adulthood?
I really appreciate this question. Parents describe it as when they transition out of school, up until then, the system has chased their child to provide service to their child. And when they transition out of school, the family and the child need to pursue services. So it's a shocking reversal of process. So Parents Helping Parents launched 2 years ago a program called Connections California, which is all about preparing for the transition to adulthood. It is the most comprehensive website and series of webinars on this topic that exists in the state of California. I think they're going to put up a link for you to our hub. It focuses on transition planning, self-advocacy, education and training, work preparation, and adult living. We have, and the landscape of all the things that need to be understood about transition are just vast and frankly, very overwhelming to families. Like you look at it and you go, oh, I need a financial plan and supported decision-making, and my child needs employment, and my child needs a social life, and my child needs a place to live, and my child medically is transitioning out of one system to another system, and my retirement effect, the ramifications of growing into adulthood are huge. So we just recommend take a look at the website and understand the landscape of all the pieces that will fit together as you support your young adult child emerging into adulthood, and then decide as a family what's most important to start off with. And every year, go back to the website, take a look, and set goals for this year of what you're going to be focusing on. We do that with a caveat to say that housing can have the longest waits and take the most time to get organized. So plan way ahead on the housing because it can take years to get the right services in place.
Yeah, the advice I give parents is, 5 years is not an excessive period of time. And so start early, and for heaven's sakes, maybe the worst case scenario is something ideal opens up before you're ready to let go.
And you can turn it down, but
Yeah.
but like at least have the opportunity if
Yep.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of parents, who deal with the system here in California, sense major flaws, see issues, problems, and often would like to do something to create change, but don't always know what to do or where to start. This is a tough area, right? Could you share with us what Parents Helping Parents for Change advocacy group does, and how can they become part of that?
Absolutely. But before we hop into that, I just saw a comment from Wayne Jasper in the chat that Parents Helping Parents has had a transition support group for 23 years that's been helping parents understand the transition to adulthood as well as adult services. And they do an incredible job. And Wayne and Trudy have been volunteer leads of that for 20 plus years. So that is available. Feel free to hop onto that. Parents for Change and Advocacy. Our systems of care that support our children only came about because people advocated for them, typically parents and allies and self-advocates. And so if our systems of care are not being responsive to our families' needs, it's up to self-advocates, parents, and allies to fight to make those systems more responsive. So Parents for Change is a program we started a few years ago, and it trains parents to be advocates for system change, to tell their stories, to understand how the decision-making in the system works, how to give public testimony. And so it trains parents who are looking to make improvements in systems of care. We also have but not everyone is able to make that sort of time commitment at certain times of their lives while they're raising and supporting their child with a disability. So we also have 1-minute advocacy opportunities that we send out in our newsletter, as well as with action alerts to inform people of when important legislation is being considered that would impact children with disabilities, may impact your family or may impact other families who have children with disabilities, but people can very quickly act on that by clicking a button and sending an email to an elected representative. So we encourage every parent. The system is only going to be responsive to children with disabilities if we are politically active as a group. So we encourage every family to when you get an action alert about disability, about a disability cause, to please participate in at least sending that email to your elected representative.
Well, fantastic. I heard an advocacy story myself one time, and I don't know how much of this is true or not. It may just be, I was going to say folklore, but I think it would be called woman lore. We all know that the Lanterman Act is the, fundamental underpinning for this system. And the story I heard was that it's a group of moms who were advocating, for their then adult children who were disabled. And they were having a hard time convincing some senators in Sacramento, and that they cornered them in the men's room. And were so determined to be able to, get their time and convince those senators of the merits of this, that they were not slowed down by the fact that these senators had gone into the men's room. So don't know if it's true, but certainly there's the power of advocacy is very strong, and I guess it comes with being persistent and consistent as well.
We don't teach that as a strategy in our Parents for Change group, but we understand the sentiment. Yeah, we understand the sentiment.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to continue to be good advocates and cultivate allies and make progress.
And if anyone watching is not on our newsletter and would like to get our newsletter so they can find out, our monthly, what programs we're having, but also how they can advocate and the 1-minute advocacy actions they can take, please feel free to add your name to the email list, and we will keep you informed as things proceed.
I guess one last question, and it's, always, I guess, a good one to be thinking about. What's the number one issue that you see, the thing that kind of needs the most addressing, the highest priority issue that the system or we all face?
That's That's a really excellent question. I'm very concerned for the housing situation with the regional center clients because of the vendorization rates that are paid and the houses that we've lost and how expensive it is to add more houses. So I have concerns 10 to 20 years out about what that landscape looks like. And I think advocacy, very, very strong advocacy is needed in the next 5 to 10 years, because we have a lot of caregivers who are aging, who have family members in their homes who will need places to stay. And so I think that's an issue that we appreciate LSA's work on, and all the others who work in the housing movement.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
it certainly takes a lot of different, there's a lot of different facets to that problem, and it's, complex. I have to agree that, probably housing followed by, staffing, being able to attract and retain good quality staff is a big challenge.
I wonder if it speaks to the larger issue of inclusion in our community, inclusion in our public affairs, inclusion in our communities, inclusion in birthday parties. I have kids who are teenagers, and I'm impressed at how much more comfortable this next generation is with neurodiversity. And I hope that as that comfort level rises, that maybe they'll come up with creative solutions that we haven't anticipated.
I think
Fantastic.
that's a good moment to pause here, and we're getting ready for our next portion, which we're going to open it up for questions for Maria and Daane. But I think first thing, we're probably going to redact the bathroom cornering of government officials from our transcript tonight. Please, team who's in the background, make a mental note of that needs to be redacted from the transcript. But
I'm sorry, Hadi, it was a public restroom.
Right. And so the other part of that is we will have transcripts available in the spirit of inclusivity available online, as well as, if you're joining us, something that I didn't get a chance to talk about, which is we have this meeting and all of our meetings being closed captioned. So everything that we're saying, you can find the transcription for that as we speak in one of your panels down at the bottom, as well as that comes in, I think, 20 different languages. The language that you choose, you can pick, but right now it's being set to English, but we will have this available in multiple languages. That being said, I am really excited to get your questions in. If you also want to take the time now to put in your questions for Maria and Daane and the Q&A feature, we can take those live on air now. We're excited to do so. There's a couple of things that were brought up, and I do want to say, Maria, you have my heart entirely when you talk about inclusion, inclusivity, and neurodiversity and acceptance among peer groups. We will have Olenka from Magical Bridge Foundation. She's our final talk for this season, but I'm excited for her to come and talk about I don't think she gets lauded enough as a change agent within communities, but she's turning the face of public parks and open space, community spaces in the South Bay on their ear. And she's doing so one community facility at a time. And so I invite you, that talk is going to be on April the 11th. Please don't miss any of our talks, but if you're going to catch one, that would be one that's worth listening to and hearing, as she talks just about inclusivity and the practical application of acceptance of a neurodiversity within the community. And I would invite all that are listening to this to come to that one as well. That being said, you brought up a few points, Maria, that I just want to circle back on before we start taking questions from the audience. You talked about finding your tribe. And here in LSA, we would call that involvement, where we encourage involvement from families, from outside community. You don't have to be a parent or a sibling of someone who has a neurodiverse way of living or thinking. You can be an advocate in other ways. Maria, can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like? Maybe some examples of someone who does not have a loved one who is who has IDD or has an intellectual or developmentally disabled, and how they can be an advocate within our community, how they can become a part of a tribe. And I know this is a question that we personally get a lot. People want to volunteer, things like that. What are the opportunities that are out there?
So I just want to make sure I understand your question well. So it's how do we include neurotypical people in our tribe for a more inclusive world?
Yes.
Wow, that's a big question. I think it's happening in all kinds of ways. Like when you look at the media and shows, they are more and more dealing with honest issues around neurodiversity. We recently had an outreach from a corporation that really emphasizes diversity in their employee base, right? And so corporations are more and more like willing to openly discuss neurodiversity as a concept. And, you know, in kind of like in all different pieces of society, we're seeing more and more inclusion. And I think the best way is just to start where people are at. So if you love soccer, there's ways for you to, you know, join more inclusive soccer leagues that would allow people to play soccer together. Or if you are in a workplace with neurodiverse individuals, include them in inviting them out to lunch, seeing if they wanted to do that with you. So I think it's people can begin wherever they are.
Without, you don't have to tell us too many details, but Maria, how did you handle the corporation reaching out to you? Is PHP a place where, let's say someone like me, if I wanted to volunteer, I wanted to become more involved in a volunteer basis, are there opportunities like that?
So a lot of our volunteering is connected in with our support and information groups. They're mostly led by volunteers. So a small group of volunteers will lead for a larger group. We also have a couple of dozen volunteers who help with website things or different projects. And then we do we have a holiday party each year that volunteers are involved with. And then of course our Parents for Change advocates are volunteers in the sense that they're providing community leadership in that area. But people are finding volunteer opportunities in all different aspects of the community.
Yeah, I love that. There's a question now from the audience, and they're asking, you mentioned that there's a support group of parents whose children are transitioning to adulthood. I looked up the support group page, didn't find a group specifically addressing that. I'm sure I'm missing it. I'm already a part of a support group of parents with adult children. Can you maybe address that?
The Parents of Adult Children with Developmental Disabilities group, PACDD, supports parents whose children are approaching adulthood as well. So that would be the smaller, more intimate support group. And then the Connections California page, which I think the link was already posted, it has a series of webinars. So it's not a support group, but there's a series of webinars on transition topics that might be useful to you if your child is transition age.
Again, this might be a good moment to say, sometimes this happens out of our webinars. People form groups or connect via these webinars. So if that's you, and again, you're trying to find your tribe, I encourage you, our social media channels are open, and that's how we connect with a lot of you all the time. I want to encourage you, we'll leave links for both website and for socials on each of our web pages, but to join our groups online and stay connected that way. And you never know what type of connections or things will form out of that. And also, as Maria has mentioned several times, there's so many webinars that are done, but if you're looking for more personal connection, I encourage you through those platforms to utilize them. Real people out there just like you, and some of them, they're literally just a keyboard click away. So there is one more question here, and it says, how can I join PHP's Parents for Change advocacy group?
So we launch like 2 to 3 advocacy cohorts per year. So we open it up and we message on our social media as well as through our newsletter over a period of like 6 weeks. And then people apply, and we have 12 slots for English speakers and 12 spots for Spanish speakers. So best way to do it is join our newsletter so that you're informed of the next cohort that will begin.
Yeah. So then this next question is, there's so many adult services out there. We're looking to connect my adult child to day programs and residential homes. Where do I start?
Well, that's an excellent question. So we haven't talked much about person-centered thinking. Or we haven't talked at all during our webinar, person-centered thinking. At PHP, we strongly believe that people should live person-centered lives. And so we encourage parents to have one-page profiles and a person-centered plan for their child's life that's inclusive of day programs and adult living, things like that. So I'd recommend beginning with that person-centered planning exploration and talking to your regional center coordinator about what services may be a good match, and then beginning to get to know those programs to see what might match your child's interests and loves and enjoyment of life best.
Yeah. Quick pivot. Dana, this next one's for you. It says, I would like to find my tribe, and it seems like LSA is a logical next step or a logical one. They'd love to be involved. How would someone do that?
I would love to answer that. I would also like to add one comment to what Maria just said.
Sure.
And that is, the starting early part, I guess, corollary to that would be to maybe identify a couple of day programs, and maybe if it's appropriate, a residential care home or provider, kind of early on, and make sure you get a chance to learn more about it, to go see it, to talk to them about it earlier in the process, before you get to a point where you're looking for who has an opening, which a lot of these programs may not have an opening and might not show up on your radar screen if you were waiting until that day you want to find an opening. So do your research and involve your service coordinator, but don't be afraid to go out beyond that to get to see some of those programs and learn more about them early on. The question that I was asked to address is, we love to engage with volunteers, and we love to promote inclusivity and engagement, in any ways we can. Having said that, it's a little challenging because we're highly regulated, and we operate licensed residential care homes, and volunteers just can't wander in and wander out on a regular basis. They have to be, if they're going to be involved on any kind of a ongoing basis, they have to be vetted, and So usually when someone, says, I'd love to, get involved, how can I get involved? We start the conversation, by, finding out what their interests and skills might be, and see if there's some way to match it up with a need that we have. I always think back to a good friend of mine who was a software engineer. And we ended up, the conversation was, why don't you come in and we'll design a work order system that we can use to manage maintenance in the homes. And so he took a standard programming tool and custom developed an application for LSA, so that, if the toilet breaks in a house, somebody on staff can enter into the system, the toilet's broken, and our facilities and maintenance folks can respond and track. So that's an example of, was a highly technical and specific kind of volunteering. But I'm happy to suggest, get a hold of us, and we'll see what where there might be a fit.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have those links again at the end of this talk. So stay tuned for that. But we're moving right along here. This next question is, what is the best way to transition my child out of our home without causing a huge disruption in their life? And Maria, I'm going to kick that one over to you, and then Dana, you can follow up.
Okay.
You're on mute.
And having spoken to parents who transitioned their children out of the home, it's a huge thing. If your child, whether they are neurotypical or have an intellectual disability, transitioning your child out of the home is a huge thing for the entire family. So I think it's, how do we plan to make it as smooth as possible? As I mentioned earlier, being person-centered in the approach is our philosophy, that you should start with creating a person-centered plan with a one-page profile that gives tools to future caregivers for your child about how to create a good environment for your child. And then begin seeking a match, a program that's a real match for who your child is. And it's all part of the whole transition growing up process, and the focus on adult living skills and the individual transition plan, so your child is as prepared for independence as they can be, and allowing that process over many years of doing chores and participating and communicating to the best of their abilities what their needs are, will all help to make for an easier transition. But sometimes the transitions don't work, and then the process begins again, and they look for another placement. So be realistic that it's challenging but there are families that find really good matches and really good arrangements for their child. So you have to just keep working at it.
Love it. Dana?
Well, I guess I would, would add kind of the perspective that, yes, make sure you're looking for programs that will work for your son or daughter. So yes, make sure that you've done the person-centered planning, and that, that's driving your process. But from my standpoint, try and find something to do during the day to start with. Don't try and, find something to do during the day and a place to live. And we want to do it all, tomorrow. So get started with something during the day. And I also hear from a lot of parents that, there isn't a lot of great day programs, and that's compounded by the fact that a lot of them got shut down by the over the pandemic and have taken longer, to start back up, and in some cases are not yet back to, full capacity. But, so my advice would be, start with the day, work on the day.
Great. There's a question that's popped up, and I'm going to kick it back to you, Dana. It says, Dana, I heard LSA's model is based on person-centered planning. Can you talk more about that?
Well, it's not just LSA's model, although, before before they, implemented, some of the changes, the person-centered planning, and, I think our philosophy, from day one is always been, it's all about the person. It's their home, and you take that philosophy and you just drive it every way you possibly can. I always tell the story of, when I first came to LSA and residential care homes, I could not believe that there were really, 500 pages of regulations. I mean, who could even know all the regulations, say nothing of make sure that they're adhering to them all. But I would get these things where somebody would say, well, according to the regulations, we need to do this. And I would say, well, what would be good enough for you? And they would just stop and, well, that wouldn't be good enough for me. I go, "Well, you got your answer." And in most cases, the regulations were setting a minimum bar, and they were really needed permission to overachieve because it was going to, cost more or entail, more time. But it was just to try and, be as respectful and as listen as well as we possibly could listen, to that individual, and make sure that, what we did and how we did it, reflected, their input, even if they couldn't verbalize it. So I think it's ultimately was taking a philosophy and making it a way of life. But, the systems, stepped up quite a bit in terms of providing actual tools to facilitate person-centered planning and a lot of training, and I think it's really helped. It's helped us, as well as it's certainly helped some other folks that, maybe didn't have that philosophy.
Yeah. I have a question here that says, I hear about self-determination and independence a lot. How does LSA and PHP promote that for IDD individuals like myself?
Could you ask for clarification? Is this regarding the Regional Center Self-Determination Program specifically?
It sounds like it is, but it does not say whether or not it's, so that whoever the person is who asked that, which was asked anonymously, are you referencing SARC Self-Determination Program? But I think the other part of that, I think Dana can speak to the independence part.
Yeah.
And where LSA stands on that, and how we promote on that. And then maybe that by that time, the person who asked that question can make the clarification. Oh, yeah. More so, the person says more so just being or gaining independent skills.
Yeah. So the theory behind self-determination is and it's a really good one, that, it should allow you to, to bake a better cake. right? To have, more freedoms to, get the right level of support and be able to combine it in a way that will, give a much better outcome. LSA is an outcome, living in an LSA home, you know, and so most people who go down the self-determination path are making their own home, or they're making their own cake instead of, purchasing LSA's cake off the shelf, so to speak. So I think it's just complementary, and of course, I always encourage more choice and more informed choice, and hope that they can improve the self-determination process. I understand it can be a little cumbersome and it's not for everybody, but yeah, well, I guess we'll continue to do our part by trying to allow as much flexibility as we possibly can. But inherently in a residential care model, we're sharing staff. And so I always tell a parent, if I've got 5 residents and I got a van or, a vehicle, maybe I'm gotten an extra one, maybe I have 2. And the staffing model for that model is 2 staff. So let's just say, I got 2 staff, 2 vehicles, and 5 people. I cannot support each of those 5 people doing whatever they want every minute of the day and night. It's just not possible. It's a shared resource. And so we work really hard, of course, to be, to teach compatibility and teach teamwork, teach being able to, give and take. Can't always have my own way. All of those other things that that people, have to learn to be able to coexist and, in shared living situations. So yeah, it's inherently, there are some conflicts between I want to do what I want to do whenever I want to do it, and successfully, which would be person-centered, right? Ultimately, some might say selfishly centered, but being that person, being able to exist in an environment where there are constraints.
Sure.
So I hope that helps.
No, that was really, really clear. And then I think it also tells a little bit of the structure without the freedom without chaos that goes into the homes that are at LSA. Maria, did you want to take a stab at that question?
I would just add that the Connections California hub on the website has self-determination or independent living skills kind of woven throughout most of those areas.
Sure.
So have a look. It comes to, for example, for some families, they need to consider how medical decisions will be made after their child is 18. So there's information supported decision-making versus conservatorship, right? And supported decision-making has a little more independence in the model. So should be informed about both of those options so your family makes the correct decision for you. But it's weaved throughout discussions around ITP plans, self-advocacy skills, and webinars by people like Michelle Garcia Winner and Dr. Damon Korb, who talk about how to develop as much independence as possible.
So that's I'd like to add to that is in that, not everybody has a conservator and not everybody has a family. Mm-hmm. And, the default is that the regional center becomes your conservator. Well, LSA's philosophy is that we're your family. We're part of your family, and we're gonna, be your advocate. And so sometimes that means that we're the one, in the meeting at the hospital, arguing that you're not ready. You're not ready to go. And so I think, it just kind of comes back to the fact that you can never have too many advocates.
Sure.
And it's a very important role, or family. You could use a family member. You can never have too many family members with a small f on family. That we see lots of situations where the system sometimes treats you differently because you're developmentally disabled. And of course, that's not right. And everybody should be, given quality medical care and not treated like, damaged goods.
Yeah. So we have about 4 minutes left in our time tonight, and there's very lively questions that are coming through the Q&A. I know that not everyone will probably get their question answered tonight, which is okay, because we have a few different avenues for you to reach out and continue the conversation. But I think we'll take maybe 1 or 2 more questions left for the night. And I want to give, I normally ask this question about once a season. I pick someone at random to ask the question of, and it's not scripted. Maria, you're it to this season. But I want to ask this question before we close, and I want to hear just from the heart. You can speak as the executive director, but Maria Daane, I want to know if you could wave your magic wand and change anything about this world as it currently is. What would you do?
Oh, that would take too long to answer.
Well, we got 3 minutes.
I guess I would just say, for this audience, my wish for your families, for your siblings, and for your children who have intellectual disabilities is that they are loved and that they are treated with love and kindness and respect by all those around them, and that they have true friendships in their life with those who appreciate who they are. And I think that is my wish for everyone on this planet, that they live and walk in love, but especially for your children with intellectual disabilities.
Very well said. Dana, has your answer changed this year?
Of course, I can't remember my last answer, but I'm also, I guess, that we all, treat each other, with respect, and that it, guides our actions. And yeah, so I'm sticking with respect. And
the world could do well with a lot more respect to go around, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I guess I always remember what my dad taught me. He said, when you're talking, you can't listen. And so shut up and listen. More listening in this world would go a long ways. So offer respect and be a good listener.
And I would say that probably is the best way to end this talk tonight. We'll have a few more announcements, but I just want to say to those who are listening and those who are going to come after, read this blog, read this transcript, that these are our leaders, folks. These are the ones that are in the community, in some ways on the front lines. And aren't you glad that this is what's in their heart? I want to thank you, Maria, for joining us for this year's IDD Topics and Trends. You've done an amazing job singing for your supper, the second talk, and it was well worth it. If you want to talk more with Maria, here's a couple of links that you can reach out to her at info@php. Someone on her team, contact her. They'll be in contact with you shortly. You can ask any questions that didn't get answered. Also, visit the website. We've put a number of links in the chat tonight for www.php.com. Feel free to reach out and explore some of those resources. Also, if you'd like to connect with us, we're on all of these socials, the main socials, I would say. I think there's more than enough information on our website, but in case you want to contact us, ask more questions, we love talking to the community. Please reach out to us at info@lsahomes.org. And speaking of community, if you enjoyed the talk tonight, come join us in person. Just kidding. For our next event next week, we'll have another talk. This time we're meeting with Pam Blayton, who has interesting social enterprise Partners for Housing. And she has a definitely interesting model for bringing groups of like-minded individuals and of neurodiverse individuals together for housing. So we'll meet with her next week. That's Tuesday, April 4th at 6:30. Join us again. The link is also in the chat. Please do register for that. It is not the same as this one. And then I was going to say, we're all going to be in the same place May 20th, and you can talk with us and people like Dana live May 20th in the Campbell Community Center. We're going to have our annual Home is Where the Heart Is, and it is going to be a great time. We'll have American Idol singer and songwriter James Durbin, and then we'll also have a comedian who's going to be hosting the night, not funnier than myself, Regina Stoops. She's a comedian, storyteller, and she's also a parent of a child with a developmental disability. And so we're really looking forward to that opportunity of being with you. Please do register. We've put the link also in the chat. And again, I want to thank you, Dana and Maria, and all of you for joining us for tonight. Please do join us again. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Maria.
My pleasure. Thank you. That was fun.
All right. Thank
you.
you, Hadia, for a great MC job tonight.
I tried. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.